So hi guys, welcome to the channel. Myself Shubham. You might all be knowing about me. So today's video is going to be all on lab. So we have with us Dr. Varun. So he's doing his residency in surgery in UK. So I think I'm right. So can you just intro yourself, please?
Hi, Shubham. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Varun Sarode. I prefer call being Varun. So
Yeah.
I am right now working in the UK. I have cleared PLAB. So right now I'm working in ITU. I have done 12 months of general surgery at Newham Hospital in Barts Health.
Okay. So we'll start with my first question. That is like, where did you do your undergrad, like MBBS, from India or from any other country?
So my MBBS is from Mumbai, MJ Medical College, Navi Mumbai, India.
Okay, so how did you make up your mind like to from doing MBBS in India and then going to UK for residency and PG and all?
So I think internship was the year when I decided. In internship, I think it was slightly stressful for me. The internship years where the internship work hours, sorry, when we used to work for 24 to 28 hours, they were a bit stressful for me. And then I thought of exploring some options. And also, to be frank, I wouldn't say that I was the smartest when I was studying for the NEET. So I wasn't sure if I'd be able to crack it. And I was more into extracurricular activities. So I wanted someone to recognize that. And when I did some research about MLE and PLAB, uh, PLAB was the most feasible option because PLAB does consider all the extracurricular activities that you do other than studies. So that I think internship was a changing year where I decided to take PLAB.
Okay, now let's get into the steps. In
Hmm.
India or like I'm studying in Philippines, so the
Okay,
conception about lab is like very complicated.
right.
Some are preparing for that and they say me like you need to do lab one in UK or is it available in India? So it's very complicated. So to start
Hmm.
with, like what is the first step that if I want to get into UK for residency or I want to do a job, so what is the first step that I need to do? Like exam, that is, I
Hmm.
think, IELTS or OET. So,
Right. Yes.
what is the criteria?
As you rightly said, first important thing is to make up your mind that whether you want to do PLAB or MLE or NEET. I think that's the most important decision. Once you have all made up your mind and you have decided to go to the UK and take the PLAB, so the first thing, as you mentioned, is OET or IELTS. So this is first the English exam, the English competency exam, which you have to sit. And once you do that, you clear that, you can book a PLAB one test. So unfortunately, without clearing this test, you can't book a PLAB one seat. So you could make a GMC account. You don't need anything for that. You can just make a GMC account. You'll get a provisional registration number. It's just a registration. It's just not sorry, not registration number, just a GMC number, which could turn into your provisional or then your license number. So you could just register on the website, and then you can take your IELTS or OET. OET is more preferred these days. IELTS is slightly difficult as far as I've heard, and with personal experiences, people don't clear it in the first attempt sometimes, and they are stuck with writing. So in IELTS, the basic criteria, I'll just tell in brief. You have to score more than 7.5 in every domain, and overall more than 7, band 7 in as a total. So that's the criteria for IELTS. OET, as I haven't sat, so I won't be able to guide. But OET is exam which is tailored for the medicos, that is the doctors, nurses, and physiotherapists. So if anyone would ever ask me which exam to give, I think OET should be the preferred exam because I think since it's meant for doctors and the medicos, it's easier to crack, and I think the writing part is much more simplified than the IELTS. So IELTS or OET, clear either of them, fulfill the criteria, and go to the GMC website if you have opened an account, and then book the PLAB one slot.
Okay, so the thing is like when you gave IELTS, so what was your experience? Like you cleared in first attempt or what was the?
So I had to unfortunately take multiple attempts. I didn't clear in the first attempt. So as many people must have experienced, I faced the same issue. I was stuck with writing.
Okay.
Seven, sorry. So seven was the requirement, and I scored 6.5. I kept scoring 6.5. So I was stuck there for a while. Um, and that did cause some delay, and I couldn't book my exam in time for because of that as well. So IELTS is a slightly tougher exam, so I would always request everyone not to take it lightly because we have this usual misconception that okay, I've been studying in English medium, I've been speaking English since maybe your high school or since your school days. So how would I ever fail an English exam? But the difference is that this the spoken English is different to what they expect from us in terms of writing, and there's a set performer that maybe sometimes you have to follow when you're doing the writing part or something. So the listening and reading part could be fine, you could easily do, but writing part and speaking part is something that people sometimes face some difficulty. So I would request not to take this exam lightly and maybe prepare because when you book an IELTS exam, they usually send you some modules. You could solve those. If not on website, there are multiple websites which provide free IELTS material or IELTS modules. You could solve that.
Okay, so the thing is like what I understood is if like someone wants to pursue there, so I think the better option is for OET to give OET.
Yes, I completely agree with you. OET is, as I've mentioned, is a tailored exam for the medicos, doctors, nurses, and pharmacists. So, I'll just give you an example which will help to simplify this. So, in writing, in IELTS writing, so there are two tasks. One is a short and a long part of the exam. So, the shorter part could be they give you two graphs and they ask you to compare the two graphs. I don't remember the word limit exactly, but I think it's 100 or 100 and 150, something like that. So you have to compare those graphs in 100 and 150 words. So there are a lot of things that you could want to talk about the graph, but you can't talk about all those things in 100 words. So you have to make it a concise review, a very brief one. So it's difficult to do that, and there's a particular way to tackle those questions. And the second question, as I mentioned, like kind of essay writing, and the question is like, there should be this is an example. So there should be only one language all over the world. Do you agree or disagree? Something like that. So if you see that this is very literature and philosophical based questions, so they are a bit difficult to tackle because you need to have a good knowledge, and sometimes even if you think smart, you won't be able to just express yourself well. But when it comes to the OET, as far as I've heard, though I haven't sat, so I won't be able to give you the experience, but
Yeah.
as far as I know, OET, it's something called as, I think you have a transfer letter or something to write, or like a prescription writing. So that makes things easier. So that's why I would say that it's easy for the doctors or the nurses, pharmacists, whoever want to give from the medical field to take that exam. That is
Okay,
medically based.
then yeah, okay, thank you. Then the next step that has to be PLAB one examination. So like what are the centers for that? Like if we can give from India or like what are the like if something is required like coaching or somewhat like that.
Right. So for PLAB, first I'll talk about the exam booking. As we have spoken about the English exam, once we clear that, then we book the exam. And once you book, so sorry about booking. So the PLAB is to be held twice a year outside the UK and four times in the UK. And as far as I'm aware, it has due to the increasing requirement of doctors I'm in the UK, they have increased the number of seats available outside the UK as well. So it's conducted four times a year now, even outside the UK. Initially, it was only March and October outside the UK. Now it's March, July, June, September. I think March, June, September, and November, something like that. So it's 4 months now, four times a year now. So this happens most in all the major cities of the world. As far as I know, for Indian centers, they are Mumbai. It's Mumbai, Delhi, Pune, Kolkata, Bangalore, something like that.
Okay.
So 5 to 6 major cities, as I'm aware for sure. And I've also known people who have gone to Dubai and taken the exams, or Sri Lanka, and they have visited the neighboring countries as well to take the exam, and that's doable. And if not, then UK is always the option.
Okay, then how can we prepare for PLAB one? Is there any coaching available or question bank or I have heard about question bank. So
Right. So yes, there are multiple question banks. I wouldn't name anything in particular, but it's just I mean, because it keeps changing, there are different people coming with a different question bank, but the questions are the same. I feel they're just different names to it. It's the same question. What I would say is that the PLAB was very different when it initially people started giving around 2017 and 18. So all the guidance that is available on the internet, people usually say that it's a very easy exam and you can easily crack it. So I think that no that concept has that image has completely changed. The exam is not easy as it used to be, or I don't know, like I never sat the exam, but what the misconception is. So um, the it's I wouldn't say it's completely MLE based, but the questions have become very clinical and they are very the clinical scenarios have become very big and very complicated these days. So I think what my advice would be to maybe whatever question bank you find online, download that, go through it. That's basically based on what the previous year questions have been. I used to have a retrospective way of studying. So suppose if a question comes up and they have given me four options, suppose if it's about breast carcinoma and the options are four different types of carcinomas. So what I would choose the right answer or whatever answer I would choose. And then what I would try to do is I would either open OHC or OHCM. That's a very famous book, Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine and Oxford
Yeah.
Handbook Clinical Specialties. So either of these you would open up and just read about them in brief. So there are the small formats of these books. They are this size. There are the big formats as well, and the small size of the same book available. So I think the small handbook is fine. You don't need to go for the big book. So I would just retrospectively read about breast carcinoma from that book and make sure that I know everything. It's going to be a very clinical question, so it's not going to be something you have to memorize. That example, dash histopathological cells are the pathological features of. If you wouldn't face any such question, they would have a very clinical oriented question where a patient comes in with this weight loss and this and this. She's feeling a palpable mass. She's about 55 years of age. There's a history of this. She is menopausal or whatever. What are you suspecting? Something like that. So that is something that would that would give you hints that this is talking something about carcinoma. Maybe this is this. So I think that's my way how I approach things. You don't need to have a vast, extensive. You don't need to read a lot of books. You just need to have a very basic knowledge, but need to have a thorough knowledge about that topic.
Okay. So suppose like someone is done with flab one, he's cleared flab one. So what is going to be the next step for flab two? Like,
So what happens as soon as you get the results for Lab 1? So what happens is you can book Lab 2, and usually the day you get the results, you can book on the same day you get to book the Lab 2. So this has been happening since I took Lab 1, which was 2 years ago in 19. So this is pre-COVID phase. So even then I had to struggle a lot for the seats. So I think in 2019. 18 I cleared, June I cleared, and 19 Jan I think I got the date for PLAB 2. As you can say, this is before COVID. I still had to wait for some, what do you say, maybe 6 to 7 months.
yeah.
So that's how much the backlog is, unfortunately. So one first advice would be to be very quick and keep your credit card details, debit card details, multiple 2 or 3 backup options ready when you're about to book your PLAB 2 seat. Get the first available slot. You definitely wouldn't get it as early as 2 or 3 months. There's going to be a 4 or 6 month delay anyway. So you'll definitely get time to prepare. I think once you book a slot, you can just plan your journey and everything to the UK or your second lab to practice and everything. So the advice would be to book your lab 2 as soon as possible and then sort everything out. But the seats
So
get filled up very easily.
after booking for flab two, so the flab two is going to be in UK. So it's going to be in I think London or Manchester, like how much I have heard. So
Hmm.
is there any sort of coaching that we need to take in after going to London or Manchester, or how does it work?
So yes, as you rightly said, there are only Manchester Center usually. They do open up London and Cambridge at times. So this had happened around 19 and 20, not 23, around 19 they had opened up the centers, but I haven't heard about them opening it these after them, these centers after that. Also, they have increased the capacity, if I'm not wrong, for the morning and evening. I think they should take 40 candidates before. I think it's gone slightly up. That's about the center. So usually it's Manchester is the center. There are multiple coachings available. I personally wouldn't want to take any name, but what I would suggest is that it's advisable to have some coaching because it's important to have an good idea about what type of exam are you about to attempt. Because I myself being from the like being my undergrad is from the medical Asian one of the Asian institute, like from Indian medical school. So maybe we are our history taking or our approach to exams are a bit different. Their approach are a bit different. So I think it's important for us to learn the approach that is expected of us in the exam, in the PLAB 2. There's nothing wrong about what we do. It's about how we do or how we are supposed to present ourselves. So I would advise that a good coaching, maybe online lectures or in-person coaching of 10 to 12 days, and a good robust practice for 30 to 45 days should be the ideal case.
Okay, so like, what do you consider like PLAB 1 and PLAB 2? Are these both of these two exams are tough, or what is the level of the exam? Like easy, medium, tough, or what is the level?
I would say it's very subjective. To actually grade the exam and depend what you're comparing with. Like since I haven't sat MLE, I wouldn't be able to compare it with that, and it wouldn't be fair to compare it with NEET as well. So these are the only exams available. I wouldn't grade them as such, but I would say that the PLAB one was meant to be, or it's been portrayed as one of the very easy exams or something. So I would always advise that not to take it easily. It's not a very straightforward exam as it seems like. It's a bit trickier than what we think it is, or it's been getting tougher day by day. Um, so I would say PLAB 1 and PLAB 2 are totally different kind of exams. PLAB 1 is more about knowing things, about being more clinical and learning your things, knowing your stuff well. And PLAB 2, if you see, it's also mentioned on the VNC website that we are not here to test your clinical knowledge. We have tested your clinical knowledge in part 1. So part 2, PLAB 2 is all about patient communication. So as you see, there are these are two completely different exams. They are testing different things and seeing the competency of a doctor in different formats or different domains. So it would be unfair to grade it, but I would just say that the preparation level or the preparation required is completely different, and for that we need some extra effort should be put in.
Okay, so like after we're done with PLAB 2, so what are the steps for that GMC registration? Like after PLAB 2?
So after PLAB 2, what you do is after around 4 weeks, between 4 to 6 weeks or 3 to 6 weeks, you usually get your results. As soon as you get your results, you can apply for GMC registration. So for GMC registration, you have to fill up some more details online. The first thing, the most important thing that they ask is the internship certificate. So one of the important criteria for GNC is that you have to have a 365-day continuous internship without a gap of something. I am not sure about it, but I think more than 20 days or something, or without a gap, something like that. It shouldn't have a gap. And that shouldn't be less than 365 days. That is one. The second criteria is you need to spend at least 3 months in surgery and 3 months in medicine. So that means 3 months in surgery and allied specialties, and same with medicine and allied specialties. So anything that you do with surgery, maybe ENT, ophthalm, can be counted in surgical fields, and anything that you do with anything else like maybe psychiatry or renal or gastroenterology specialties can come into medicine. So I think usually all our Asian internships are aligned in a way that you definitely fulfill that criteria.
Okay, like then Varun, like what if someone fails in PLAB 2, like for the clinical exam?
So you can give multiple attempts. There's a limit. I think you can give up to three attempts, and then after 3 attempts, unfortunately, if you still fail, then you can appeal to the GMC, and they could. It depends upon them that they could maybe um, let you attempt it for the fourth time. But I think three is the max time. Fourth, only in rare scenarios they let you attempt for the fourth time. But after that, unfortunately, you can't attempt it anymore. Four is the maximum that they allow you after GMC lets you do it. Then I wouldn't say that's the end of your UK journey. If you're still keen about it, you could still work on it, and then you could give some specialty exams like MRCs, MRCP. But PLAB unfortunately gives you 4 attempts, one and two, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, then like after we are done with GMC registration, so like what is the process to get our first job?
GMC, as I mentioned, so internship, you fill in the details. Then we want to ask you about your employment history. Basically, since the day of graduation, what have you done? Where have you worked? So that's the second thing. So after you fill these two things, the GMC usually takes maybe it varies. During our time, they used to reply to us within 1 to 3 weeks. But maybe due to COVID and backlog and the workload, they might be taking longer. I'm not aware about the present time situation. So they usually get back to you within 1 to 3 weeks, and usually they just want to confirm. They usually have some other concerns with respect to your internship or something. They usually have this concerns that shouldn't demotivate anyone. That shouldn't be worried that why GMC investigating or something. It's their way of just to verify the details. Sometimes they ask the your medical college to reply back to their email or confirm some details, or maybe just to cross check or verify some details. They usually do that. So that usually takes them getting back to you, then you responding. So this process usually takes somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks. If someone has some complicated history, so they might take longer. So after they have done it in 4 to 6 weeks is the max you would need for registration. Once you have registered, you can open an account on NHS.uk, NHSjobs.uk. Sorry, actually you could open this account before or during your GMC registration is going on. You could apply. So you open an account, you simultaneously apply for GMC registration, and the process is going on. So when you apply an account, when you open an account on NHSjobs.uk, then you start applying for jobs. So what you do usually is it's a fairly simple website. You just go in there, and then there is a search box. You put in your details, what you want to specifically search. You put your doctor, your whatever you want to know, your clinical terms like SHO, Foundation Year 2, or clinical fellow. You put in your details. You select the area you wanted all over the UK or just London specific, Manchester specific. You choose your area you want to apply for jobs, and then all the jobs come up. Then you start applying for jobs. When you apply for a job, there also is an option where they ask you, are you completely GMC registered? So you could mention that. That is always an option. You could mention GMC registration, awaiting cleared PLAB2, but awaiting GMC registration. And if you have fortunately cleared, you could just say that I am completely GMC registered, and I am verified to work in the UK. And then you apply for jobs. So the usual timeline for applying jobs are to hear back from the trust is that you apply for a job on maybe first of a month, and the closing date is 15th. So usually they accept all the applications till 15. After closing date on 15, maybe by 25th of the same month, you might hear back from them if you're shortlisted. And if you hear back till the 25th, maybe 10 days from that day, they will schedule an interview for you, and they'll let you know that you have been selected for an interview on this day. And usually after giving an interview within a week or something, you should hear back from them. That is what the usual timeline is, which was pre-COVID. I am not sure if that's still happening, but still, this is what usually happens. Maybe it takes somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks for you to get shortlisted, interviewed, hear back from them. That's what the usual process is about.
Okay, so is there any case if you have gone through that someone has done this GMC registration and is applying for jobs and is not getting any job?
So unfortunately, yes, there have been people. There were quite a few people before as well. And there have been people, the more number of people are increasing in the waiting list because of the COVID as well now. So yes, that happens. Unfortunately, it's not, I mean, there is a shortage of doctors, but not necessarily everyone is getting a job. The only thing that I think I would advise in such situations to do, maybe continue working back home and try to work on your CV, get some presentations, publications, something like that, which makes your application stand out from other people, and then that helps you shortlist.
Okay. So then what is the process of work visa after we are done with the registration?
So you apply for job, they interview you, shortlist, and they send you they send you a contract. You sign the contract. So after you do that, they usually send you a course, that is certificate of sponsorship. So once you have certificate of sponsorship, with that they would want some. Before the certificate of sponsorship, they would want some documents from you. They would be a basic passport, and then they would ask you to do a couple of tests. That would include a test for TB, which is you have a specific certificate called a TB certificate. There are a lot of UK accredited labs around all over India where you could go and you could get yourself tested. So usually it's like a physician ask you a couple of questions, they get a chest X-ray and they get a blood test done. And after all these three are cleared, you usually get a TB certificate that you never had any contact with TB or you never had any past TB exposure. So something like TB, police clearance certificate, passport, and maybe a vital screen or something. So after this 3-4 documents you have gathered, you send them, and after you send them, they usually send you the cost back. That is a your sponsorship. That is your that is the trust saying that we are hiring this doctor to work in our firm. So after you got your course and your passport, you directly go to the visa office and you book an appointment and you apply. That this is the course and this is the reason I'm going to the UK. So tier two visa usually this, and then you get a tier two visa. Tier two is a general work visa. So usually it's given for somewhere between 1 to 3 years. Ideally they give for 1 year and they extend it every year. So that's what usually happens, and we get it within 2 to 3 weeks from applying. And usually the rejection rate is very low for tier two visa, as it's a very valid purpose for you to go to the UK because someone from there is calling you to work in that trust. So that's how it works from them.
Okay. So like, what is the salary salary, and also what is the cost of like the total expenses for PLAB 1 and PLAB 2?
So as far as I remember, PLAB 1 was around 250 pounds, sorry. And PLAB 2 is around 810 pounds. So if you see that sums up to 100 pounds, if you, sorry, 1000 pounds or 1100 pounds, which roughly, if you're talking about INR, it would be around 1 lakh rupees, 1 lakh or 1 lakh 10,000 rupees or so. That's what the usual cost is, only to sit the exams. Then if you consider coaching could be something between 3 to 500 pounds. Travel and stay to the UK would be, so usually people who stay in Manchester are paying around 20 pounds a night. That's like the approximate value. And assuming you would stay there for a good 30 days to practice, 30-45 days, so you could just calculate that. 600 pounds a month. And eating would be 200-300 extracurricular stuff, eating, miscellaneous, shopping, or just maybe roaming around a bit, taking breaks. So I would say 1100 plus stay 600, and maybe travel, let's take 400 flight tickets return. This is, I'm assuming PLAB 1 you take in your home country and PLAB 2 you're going there. So 2000 would be your stay, this and this. So maybe 2500 to, I mean, this is a very fair approximate. It definitely differs from maybe something between 2000 to 3000 pounds would be like 2 to 3 lakhs INR should be the fair amount to from PLAB 1 to PLAB 2 with maybe like coaching or eating.
Including coaching.
I would say including coaching, 3000. Yeah.
Okay, so approx you can consider 3 lakhs or 3.5 lakhs.
I would say yes. Yes, the whole process would be that, yes.
Okay, so and like after we get our first job in UK, so what is going to be like our salary?
So salary usually is, so they have something called as basic salary, and there's something called as banding. So basic salary means the 9 to 5 job you're paid for that. And banding basically means working in unsocial hours. So that basically means anything after 7 o'clock on weekdays is on social hours, and working after working since like from Friday 7 p.m. to Monday 8 a.m. is again on social hours, since it's the weekend, sorry. So basically doing nights, on calls and weekends is banding. So what usually happens is usually get somewhere around maybe somewhere between 45,000 to 50,000 is your package per annum, 45 to 50,000 pounds, and this would be before tax deduction. And after tax deduction, maybe I would just say fair approximate, you will be getting something between 2,500 to 2,800 in your hand.
Yeah. So my next question is like, actually, I'm not able to totally understand about the NSS system. Like, I think there is first year, second year, and like this something. And after residency also, there are, I think, 3 years or something. So if you can clarify about that.
Right. So the most important thing about the UK is that the UK training program is pretty long compared to other countries. It's 8 years. So ideally how it works is that you come to the UK. That internship is 1 year. Here, the foundation year training is of 2 years. Though our 1 year is equivalent to their 2 years, you don't necessarily need to repeat that foundation year training. But there's something called as competency. You have to get your competency signed. So there is something called as a CREST form. So the CREST form stands for CREST. That's like completeness, complete readiness to enter specialty training. So to get that form signed, you have to work for 3 to 6 months. So if you consider a very ideal scenario, you come to the UK, you get a form signed. Once you get it signed, you are completely eligible to apply for training. So that can take around 3 to 9 months, or maybe 3 months to 12 months to get it signed, depending upon the individual, how focused he is and how he gets signed, depending upon when he tick boxes, all those criteria in those forms. So that is the time he requires to get into training or before the training. Then you apply for training. If you are lucky, you get in the first year. If not, you apply again. So this is a non-training, which doesn't contribute towards your training. Then you get into training. So there are 8 years of training. So first year is usually called as, so in surgical field, it's called as core training. It's of 2 years. In medicine, the initial years of 3 years, it's called as IMT. It's internal medicine training. So IMT is 3 years and surgical training is 2 years. So this forms a common stem for all the specialties, no matter where you want to go. And then at IMT 4 in medicine and at ST 3, that is specialty training in surgery. Okay, you decide. So IMT is IMT 1, 2, 3 and CT is 1, 2. So it is IMT and CT that forms the basic and then forms your specialty training. So if you want, so at ST3, you could apply for upper GI, HPB, colorectal, and other specialties. In medicine, you could apply for your same as cardiology, nephrology, renal, and everything. So this is the ideal scenario, but there are some cases and some specialties like GP training, that's for 3 years. I think histopathology is for 5 years. Also, there is pediatrics is for, I think, 5 to 6 years. I don't think so. It's 8 years long. There are few exceptions. And also there is something called as run-through program. So as I mentioned that you apply for CT1, 2, then you go for ST3. So the difference is that sometimes you go for CT1, 2, you do 2 years of training, and then you again apply for ST3 level. That is again because you are branching out for specialties, for more super specialized training. So same happens with medicine, same happens with surgery. But there are some fields where you could apply for run-through program. So basically, so something like cardiothoracic or neurosurgery, they have a run-through program from CT 1 year. That is the first year of training. So once you get into first year of training of neurosurgery run-through, then it's 1 to 8 years straight. You don't come out of the training program. You don't again apply for the third year. This is a very difficult to understand. I understand. I don't think so. I might have been able to understand. Maybe we could make a PowerChart point or something which will help understand better. But just trying to give you an overview. First year entry, third year entry. There are 2 ways to enter. If not, then there's a direct 8-year course. There are different varieties that you get.
Okay, so like if you talk about you, like you are into surgery residency. So
I'm sorry, I'm not in residency now. I'm still aspiring surgeon. I'm gonna apply this year. I'm not in residency.
Okay, like after you are doing your job, so you can choose something like surgeon or something, or it is only like general.
Definitely, like, you can apply for the job you want. So the difference in the difference over here is when you choose your specialty. I mean, you get to choose. It's not entrance exam based. So what happens is if you choose your own specialty, you have to develop your portfolio and to show your inclination towards that specialty. So suppose if you're surgically inclined, you have to attend conferences or you have to attend courses and research stuff in that particular field. Definitely, everything else is also recognized and it is valued equally. You can't be so research is something is a big thing. You can't be publishing only in your field, but it just counts more. So something like that. So you develop a portfolio which shows inclination towards your specialty, and then you go and apply for that specialty. At the same time, you could apply for all the specialties.
Okay, that is why I read also all your publications that you had mentioned in your Instagram bio. I read all that. And then the thing is, what I understood is like if I want to get into surgery, So there might be some process, like if I want to get into surgery, I can apply differently for surgery, and someone wants for medicine, he can apply differently, or it's the same criteria to apply for all.
So it's a different criteria. So what happens is there is a website, Oriel website, which is for training jobs. As I mentioned, nhsjobs.uk, which is only for jobs all over the UK. But Oriel website is for training jobs, training purpose only. So for all the training posts all over the UK, you can go and apply. So every specialty has their own application form. They have different questions. The baseline remains the same. They ask about your employment history, visa status, and all those things. But it's slightly different because the portfolio scoring and everything is over there, and then you have to mark yourself. So surgery has a different form. Medical training has different. There's something called as ACCS, that is acute stem for all the clinic, the acute care specialties, that is A&E, anesthesia, and ITU. So those three are combined and applied together. There's gynae, separate application, psych, GP, all everything have a separate application. You can apply to all the fields. You can apply to one field. It's up to you.
Okay. So, like if you see, like when you first went there, so how was the life in UK? Like, did you face any problem, or how was your experience? Any sort of racism or
Um,
something?
no, I wouldn't say I have experienced any of those, fortunately. And fortunately, I've been in London as well, and it's multi-diverse. It's very, very diverse here. So the experience has been very, very pleasant so far. And you definitely meet a lot of people from different races and different cultures. So I don't think so any particular race or culture here is predominant to give any bad experience to others. So I don't think so. It's that evident. I don't think so. You would be facing any of these. Um, so Leaving in the UK, I think the most difficult part would be initially when you come here, you are alone, you have to make your own social group. So I think that part might be a bit difficult to settle in a new place because you have to handle everything on your own, opening a bank account, finding a house, accommodation, getting your name on the voters list, and a few more formalities. So that is slightly difficult because not necessarily we are used to all these things back home. And even if we are, the rules and regulations or the formalities are a bit different. So it was a bit difficult to settle in, but it's completely doable. People are there to help. You have a lot of guidance, and definitely on the NHS website, you have everything, gov.uk. It tells you about each and everything in detail.
Okay, so Varun, actually, I had heard that London is more expensive than Manchester. So from the starting, you were living in London, like from the time of Lab 2, or else you shifted from Manchester to London, or what is that?
So yes, London is slightly expensive compared to other cities. That's a fact, but not necessarily all parts of London. Like central London could be more expensive than definitely Greater London, that is the periphery of London. So not the whole of London, but it is. But also at the same time, the prime areas of Manchester, Birmingham, and Liverpool, all these major prime areas also are equally costly. But yes, I was in Manchester. I took my exam in Manchester. I was there before and after the exam. I was there. Then I went to Coventry to do my attachment, and then I had gone back home. Then after my clear my exams, I got a job. Did the interview from online from via Zoom from India, and then I came to London directly just to start the job.
Okay. So like after you are doing a job in London, so is there any criteria to bring our parents like permanently or something like that?
No,
Like
unfortunately, we don't have
residential.
any such. Sorry.
Actually, like if we get work visa, then also like I have heard that after 5 years you can get the citizenship. So after that, is there any kind of rule or something that we can get our parents back to UK or something?
Yeah, so unfortunately, that is something that is counts as one of the biggest con of coming to the UK. That we can't get your parents here. So we definitely could get them on a visitor's visa. We could get them for 6 months, but then that's the longest they could stay at one stretch, and they have to unfortunately go back and I think come back again after 6 months or something. They do get a visitor's visa of 6 months initially, and later could apply for 2 or 5 months of visa again, but they will never be able to stay for more than 6 months at a stretch from the day of entry. That's one. And second, the reason is that when you get an ILR or you get a British passport, your dependent people get a visa that Unfortunately, your dependent is your wife or husband, depending upon the person and their children. But your parents don't become the dependent, so they unfortunately only get a visitor's visa. But your wife and your
Okay.
wife slash husband can get, and son daughter can get the citizenship.
Okay, then Varun, actually for example, okay, like I am a student, so I'm
Hmm.
doing my MBBS in Philippines. So now
Right.
I'm into third year. So our course is basically of 5 years, from which the last year is internship or clerkship. So that 1 year we are doing the basic criteria that we have said of 3 months of surgery and 3 months of medicine. So
Hmm.
our basically that is of 2 years of surgery and 2 years of medicine. But we have other like anesthesia for 1 month, ophthalmology and orthopedics and all that. So will our internship or clerkship be valid when we are going for UK or when we'll be giving lab?
Yes, definitely, because as you mentioned, orthopedics and everything counts in surgical and allied specialties. So the surgical doesn't mean only general surgery. All the allied specialties do count. So definitely, this is anesthesia goes in medicine, maybe, and surgery, orthopedics in surgery. So if you accumulate everything, it is definitely going to be 3 months and more.
Okay, so like what message are you going to give us? Because now I'm in third year and I'm also aspiring like to go there like you and yeah, continue residency and all that. So basically now what I'm doing is I'm preparing something from Marrow, like you must have heard about Marrow. So I'm into third year. So what like message do you want to give me like for future and when should I go and attempt for lab one and what should I do basically?
So Lab 1 can be given an internship, and after internship, you don't need to finish internship for that. IELTS can be given before, IELTS slash OET, whichever you prefer. So I think what I would advise is find like till final year, it's important to concentrate on your studies. The NEET, lab or MLE, that I think shouldn't matter to you. What I think should matter is your personal development. That should be on your portfolio, because if you work on your portfolio, it's going to be essential and helpful in all the three exams. So I don't think so. You should plan about that or study from that perspective from now. In internship and after internship, you should have sufficient time to study for your entrance. This is just my opinion. I mean, this is how I would if I had a chance to go back and change. I mean, this is what I followed, but still finally I consider your studies, score well. When you're doing that, try to be more involved in extracurricular activities, like maybe in leadership, management, publications. Try to arrange small camps or anything, small teaching sessions for your first and second years or something like that, which helps you revise the topic, which helps them gain something from you, which helps you with the teaching and all those things. So my advice would be portfolio, work on your portfolio, not necessarily to tick the boxes, be it MLE or PLAB, but to be like improve your portfolio so that you are more confident as a doctor when you're going in or taking any exams. Don't think about PLAB or anything till then. Once you're in internship, I think that's when you can start planning. Um, I think the best time would be to give OLT or IELTS during your internship. And maybe as you're nearing your internship, like our internship ended in March. Okay, so it ends on Feb 20th or something like that. And March 15th was the entrance, the first lab that is to happen in India. So that's what many of my juniors had planned, and I really liked the way they had planned. I wasn't so I had taken time because I wasn't sure about my pathway then, or I didn't have the proper guidance. So I wasn't so quick, but this is what my juniors planned. I really thought that was very time consuming. So IELTS and OET during your internship and consular internship, you have to gain that clinical exposure as well. When your internship is ending, if you have cleared IELTS or OET, you could book maybe March or July exam. Any of those. If you think March would be too early because with internship you can't study, if your internship is hectic, maybe you could just book a July exam. And in those 3 4 months after, if your internship, depending when it ends, and then in the 3 4 months you could study for the July exam, clear it, come for PLAB 2, and take it from there. And the gaps in between, try to work back home with work, try to work on your CV again, as I mentioned, research, leadership, teaching. These are three main criteria which always will be helpful for you.
Okay, suppose you're talking about the CV. So if I want to improve my CV portfolio, so if I write a book and suppose I publish that book in suppose Amazon, Kindle or somewhere, so can I link that in my portfolio and will it be useful?
So unfortunately, like the self-published books might not carry that much weightage. It's I would say if you want to do that, pursue as a hobby, but don't think it from the portfolio CV point of view. That is something good, and I mean, not I wouldn't know many people who have done that, so I wouldn't say that don't do it just because it won't count. You can do it to nurture your hobbies, but if you're talking about CV and portfolio now, then I would say maybe work on research or something like case reports, case series to start with. That would be the stepping stone when you want to enter the world of research. It's advisable not to get into meta-analysis, systematic review, just as you see something. Maybe start with the poster presentations, case reports, and case series. This is completely doable during your med school without investing a lot of time and concentrating on your academic career as well. So start with that. Work on the publication things. Book wise, it won't carry for portfolio points, unfortunately. If it carries, you won't get much.
Okay. So, and I have heard about that lab is going to be replaced by UKLME or something like that.
Yes.
So, what do you think for like after 2 years or 3 years in 2023 or 24? Like, will it be very hard or tough to get jobs after we are done with all the process in GMC registration also?
So unfortunately, it is at the moment. I'm not aiming to be discouraging. I'm just trying to be practical. That it is also not very easy, unfortunately, because of COVID and other reasons. There's a lot of backlog and everything, so it's not easy now as well. So I don't think so. Would get any tougher, or I don't think so there's anyone who could be able to predict that. What I would say is that if you really want to pursue something, you just go for it. You shouldn't think about what is going to change. As far as we know, UK MLE or UK MLA, I think it's not going to change much. It's just that it's going to be more US type exams where the UK graduates would sit the exam with the IMGs, and then you would be applying for jobs and everything else. So, anyways, that's the same scenario with the training anyway. When for training you apply with the UK grads, it's on the same. It's nothing different. So maybe it would be slightly difficult, slightly more weight. It could be, but it's difficult to. It's difficult for anyone to predict that. But I don't think so. That should be the demotivating, or that should be the reason that someone who wants to pursue lab shouldn't pursue, because you will definitely face some difficulties, but it's doable. I think it should be doable. It will be slightly tougher, maybe, but I don't think so it's impossible.
Okay, Varun, then I think your time was very valuable. Like you spent a lot of time to let us explain all the stuff. Actually, my classmates and all are having a lot of doubt about that. So that was the reason I just contacted you so that we can make a video on that. So
Okay,
thank you
no
very much.
problem.
And
You're welcome.
yeah, thank you. So,
Yeah, no problem. Welcome. I hope that helps. Take care. Good luck to all of you.
yeah, bye. Take care. Thank you.